Assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace. Welcome to the Pathways to Spirituality online workshop series. My name is Daniel Yassine Nelson. I'm the director of GAMA New York, gathering all Muslim artists. GAMA is a nonprofit artist-run collective dedicated to providing a platform of support to Muslim artists and creatives in the United States and throughout the world. We wanted to remind you that our programming is run on community donations and support, so we do ask you to donate as generously as possible, and thank you. Today we are very pleased and honored to welcome Elinor Aishah Holland to our program. Elinor is a professional master calligrapher based in New York State, and today she will be leading a workshop on the ancient script of Kufic. We invite you to use this as an opportunity to delve into your own spiritual practice and path. Thank you so much for joining us, and Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. And we begin with the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Welcome to a drop from the ocean of Islamic calligraphy. The piece we're looking at is done in a style called muhaqqaq. This is a piece I created, copying a traditional form of past master calligraphers and mounted with gold on marbled paper. We see another sample of the Bismillah in the lower section below the gold illuminated chapter heading, in a very different style, in the ancient style called Kufic calligraphy. Before the descent of the Quran to the Prophet, peace be upon him, as he sat in isolation, and the angel Gabriel came and delivered him this message, Arabic was a language that was used for spoken word arts and culture, and not many people knew how to write, and not many people knew how to read, and the alphabet itself was not very developed. This page of the Quran you're looking at is one of the early styles developed by the Muslims. They wanted to create a container that was as magnificent and beautiful as the magnificent and beautiful message that had been delivered. This style is called Kufic. Really, all the early styles are called Kufic. So what you just saw was Kufic. What you're looking at now is Kufic. These are all Quranic pages. You will notice that they're illuminated. You will notice that there are very few words and very few lines. And so many volumes had to be included to make a Quran, an entire Quran. And you'll see yet another style that I include under the name Kufic, although no one knows what it was actually called at the time, and no writing exists anymore about it and the people who created these beautiful styles. Calligraphy is one of the many gifts of the Quran. This is a style that art historians call Eastern Kufic. Notice how angular and how many straight lines, and how the lines have a baseline. They stay on a straight line, a vertical line, like Latin script, and yet, you see the curves and the beautiful design elements. The early Muslims were using calligraphy in mosques, and in order to be able to put the Quranic message in tile, using a grid, like hopefully you can see here. This is on grid paper. This style of square Kufic was developed. Here is something from a mosque in Iran that's all Kufic, done in tile. And if you look at the lower right side, and you know some Arabic, you will see Allahumma. Salli ala Muhammad, and then it goes on for there. All the early calligraphy was Quranic. It was all to make the truth clearer and more beautiful, to decorate the truth, to refresh the eye when it saw the message. And this is a sample of a page of Maghribi style calligraphy. It's a Quran, and you'll see a chapter heading in gold, and that would be Kufic style. And right beneath it, you see the Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. You see the long horizontal stretch. This is a much looser kind of style, although it does keep to a baseline. It's a little loopier. It's a little lighter in its touch and in its feel. And here we have some Andalusi style calligraphy from the Alhambra. And really, it doesn't stay on, it's not confined to any baseline. It's very free form. And if you zoom out and you see how it was used with geometric tile work, carved in stucco and tile, this is the Alhambra. It has a kind of lightness to it, which is just magnificent. But back in Baghdad during the big cultural revolution, new styles were being developed that were very formal and yet were curvaceous. But this is a style called Naskh. It has a sister style called Thuluth, which we'll see. They're often used together. But this is done with a small pen, and it's pretty compact. And it doesn't adhere to a strict baseline. And you'll notice the Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim underneath the elegant yet spare illumination on the right page. Illuminators did illumination. Illumination is a different art than calligraphy. So these are illuminated pages, badly in need of repair. And you see that illumination is not just gold. It's color, it's design. There are motifs, floral, and some geometric. And these two pages are short hilyas about the prophet Hud and the prophet Ismail. A hilya is a literary device which describes the character and the physique of a person who's revered. Here we see a hilya sharif, which is a description of the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him. This is a piece that includes both the larger Thuluth style and the smaller Naskh style that we've just been looking at. And this is a piece done by my teacher, Mohamed Zakariya. In this case, he did the illumination and the calligraphy. He's really a true master and a genius. Most calligraphers study calligraphy, illuminators study illumination. Every now and then, a gifted person studies both. But this is a traditional format which came into use, and you can see many different versions of the hilya, basically with this format, but slight, subtle variations. Variations in the lettering style and variations in the illumination. The fact is that these images are portraits, but they're portraits in word and design. The top piece here is just some pure, beautiful, elegant Thuluth. And you see how the letters dance on the line like it's a wavy horizon. They don't adhere to a strict, straight baseline. And below you'll see a piece which this type of piece is literally called a qita, a piece. And you will see a phrase. It could be Quran, it could be part of a hadith, it could be a saying in Thuluth, and then beneath it a section in Naskh. So because the Naskh can be more concentrated, you can get more words in. And in this case, You're seeing some illumination, which is the design, but sometimes you have marbled paper and sometimes you have gold flecked paper. This is a piece in thuluth, which is really one of the more flexible styles of calligraphy. And this is a commonly seen ayah about God having created every living thing from water. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَيًّا. And although calligraphers really are copyists and study very specific proportioned letter forms, there is room for expression. And you see this with this river running through the phrase. Thuluth, again, as I've been mentioning, is so flexible that you can create puzzles almost. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. You can create complex compositions where letters overlap, where they repeat. And yet, this is legible. It may take some time. It draws the viewer in. It gives them a beautiful reminder of what is true. And when you can read and understand the phrase that's written, it's one side of the coin. There is both content and form, both meaning and visual beauty. So I've been mentioning that there are proportions to all the letters. Not every style is so specifically proportioned, but thuluth, which I'll be honest is my favorite style, is very well proportioned. And it's proportioned with these diamonds that are made by making a small stroke with the tip or nib of a broad-edged pen. And so you see the letter seen here. There are some stroke markers, but what I'm looking at is the proportion dots, called nuqta in Arabic. And so this is how to measure many different parts of the letter form. This image is taken from a calligraphy manual, and the instruction is written in a much simpler style called riqa, which is more like beautiful handwriting. So the Arabic language consists of 28 letters which connect to each other. And when these letters connect, depending on whether they're the beginning, middle, or end of a word, they change form. And so the curriculum, the study of a calligrapher, is to learn all these shapes and forms and how they change depending on where they are in a word. So this is the letter seen lesson with many proportion marks written in. What a student does is takes this exemplar written by a teacher or a printout that was written by one of the great traditional masters and practices and practices and practices, and then presents their teacher with their own lines of this lesson, leaving space for the teacher to make corrections in red. So many years ago, I was getting an awful lot of red from my teacher. Let me also show you the malleability of the thuluth script and many of the scripts in Arabic. You can turn it into a pear. And by the way, this says Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And you can have mirror writing, and you can have several different styles. You can combine Kufic with thuluth, for instance. And really, these are all visual reminders. This is visual remembrance. I've heard the phrase visual dhikr. Each one of these pieces reminds you of the truth. It invokes the truth. It brings the truth into the space you're in. This is another style, muhakkak. You saw that in the first slide I showed. And it's similar to thuluth, but there are differences. You will see here the size of this page of Quran. The finger there is from the hand of my teacher, Mohamed Zakariya. Another style, which is a fairly modern style, probably only 500-600 years old, is called Diwani or Divani, again, depending on your language and culture. And this is a piece actually done by Mohamed Zakariya. And it has a very different kind of use of space and line weight. And it's very beautiful and elegant. Another style, which is done very small and also very large, as you can see right here, is called, in this case, Talik, because it was done in the Ottoman school by Necmettin Efendi, but it's also done heavily in Iran, and it's where it's called Nastalik, and there's some subtle differences, and the Arabs tend to call it Farisi. But you see, Quran can be used, in book form. It can be used monumentally in architecture and tile work and stonework and stucco work. But also, it can be framed as a piece of art, which can be called a levha or lauha. I was in Istanbul once, and I looked up near the Topkapi Palace and saw this beautiful poem in Turkish Talik with this emblem here up at the top of one of the names of the Ottoman sultans. Just out on a street, I glanced up and saw this amazing writing. Now, there are a lot of different styles of Islamic calligraphy, and Chinese Islamic calligraphy is one that's actually becoming rather popular these days. It has the flavor of Chinese brush calligraphy, but it's actually not made with a brush. It's made with a pen that has some fabric glued to it. So it gives you that dry brush feeling, but it has the line weight of a broad-edged pen. This may seem like a bit of a puzzle to try to read, but if you go to the lower right side when you see a composition like this, that's where you begin. You begin and you read from right to left and then upwards. And this says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. This is the Bismillah in a mosque in China. It's really refreshing. It's very different than other styles, and it's beautiful. This is a piece I did, and you can see I combined my knowledge of Latin script with the Arabic script, and you can see how there's design in the lettering. Letters overlap. Letters move up and down in this, what I would call donut space. But I want to end here and let you enjoy this for a moment. Each one of these pieces can be contemplated over and over. It's static in a way, like a mandala, and it offers a window into contemplation. And yet I'll tell you, the more you look at it, the more you see. Thank you for watching. Greetings from a drop within the ocean itself. Now I'm going to demonstrate to you the real bottom line, the real truth of being about a calligrapher, of making letters, show you the tools, talk to you a little bit more about the method, and do some demo for you. These are my tools. These are my beloved pens. You can see that some of them are bamboo. This is made from a bamboo brush, a Chinese brush that had a bamboo holder. These are reed pens. This kind of reed comes from Iraq, Iran, and is sold throughout the Middle East, but it's not readily available here in the United States, in North America. these reeds are much harder, much denser than the reeds that grow around here. Bamboo also grows all around the United States, but I live on the East Coast, and the bamboo that grows around here also is not dense enough, it's not hard enough. So I'm always looking around and finding new sources and new ways to get the reeds. You can order all this stuff from suppliers in Turkey, but I'm into shopping locally. So there we go. This tool is a chipping knife. It's one of many different kinds of knives that people use to trim pens. Some people use this kind of knife. Some people use a scalpel. I say use whatever works best, but I happen to really like this. It's a Fiel, P-F-I-E-L, chipping knife, number 12, and I keep it very sharp. I have used this kind of, craft knife, a decent craft knife, like Ulfa is good, but I still prefer, bottom line, nice handle, keep it sharp, because what we're going to be doing is carving a pen nib. And it's a skill that one has to develop in order to be a calligrapher. You can't depend on other people to sharpen up your pens for you. At a certain point, the nib, because it's made of fibrous material, will get mushy at the end and get like a little spongy. And you have to take out a sharp knife. I hope you heard that snap. And take the tiniest little bit of the tip. I mean, I don't even know if that's visible to the naked eye. You take a little bit of the tip off and you go from there. And that's how you use your pen. What you'll notice is I'm working on a leather-covered board, which creates just the right amount of softness and give that I need for writing. You can also use a magazine, if anybody still gets magazines. I have gotten from Staples, I have gotten some packing foam for packing plates. That also works as just a soft cushion. I just wouldn't work on a hard surface directly because you'll only be making things more difficult for yourself. Let me tell you a little about my ink. I prefer a lamp black ink, which is ink made from soot. You know, the Muslims say that the soot collected in the mosque lamps made the best ink. It had that barakah, that blessing in it. Whether or not that's true, I will say my teacher, Mohamed Zakariya, has made his own ink, and it is the best ink. But, they call it lamp black ink, and it comes in many different forms. Sumi inks, and I use the plural because there are many different kinds of Sumi ink. Sumi inks are a soot-based ink. Some people use acrylic inks. You will find the ink you like, but what you do want, especially when you start, is a free-flowing ink, because you don't want to get your pen gummed up. And what you're noticing here is I'm doing something that, technical. The technical term is mushing and gushing. So I have a little inkwell. I have some raw silk thread or something similar, a kind of yarn, not wool, that will not put out fibers but is very absorbent, so that I can completely saturate it with ink and fluff it up. Different calligraphers like different consistencies in their inkwells. I like it on the wet side, fluffed. And, that stirring that I do, I try to do with one of these porcupine quills if I can find it, but, often enough, I use like a popsicle stick. Anything will do. And so this is my field of writing. And the first thing I want to show you is actually what the Sufis would say is the essence of the entire meaning of the Quran. So don't often work with a pen this big, but just for the sake of demonstrating at this moment, I'm going to gently dip really the bottom side of my broad-edged nib into my inkwell, and I'm going to slow down, and I'm going to be soft, and I'm going to place my pen coming down onto the paper, landing it like a helicopter. Very different way from the way you use a brush. And I'm going to make that stroke, and I'm going to lift. And I'm going to face the fact that I'm not quite happy with that one, and I'm going to do it again. And that's really essentially the way of the calligrapher. The whole essence of existence, of meaning, is contained in this dot. And we are trying to make a perfect one. And we fail over and over. These dots, or nukta in Arabic, are extremely important, as you've seen in the earlier part of this presentation. They really help us measure and form our letters, and they are the building block for the entire alphabet. But before we do that, really, we should take this pen and mess around a little bit with it, because if you're not familiar with using a tool like this, there's a lot that it has to teach you. We learn from the pen. The pen teaches us. And people say this to me over and over in all the different kinds of calligraphy I do, that playing is extremely important. It's experimentation. It's improvisation. I want you to notice that I can make all these different strokes, very different widths, from this pen. If you observe that I had my pen on a slant like that, talking about the tip of my pen, I turned it up to about 45 degrees, turned it up to about 75, 80, put it on what I'm going to call 90 degrees. And the other thing to notice about the pen is that I can hold it on one angle steadily, depending on where I move and how I move. And also you can see we have to dip. The line width, the nature of my line changes. One of the things when you use a pen like this, which I'm just demonstrating to you briefly, is the dipping. There's a rhythm to the dipping. And you have to get used to that. You have to get a feeling for when your pen is going to run out of ink. And you do develop that feeling, and you develop that feeling through practice. And the word in Arabic that's migrated into Turkish, and I'll confess here that I follow the Ottoman school, the word is mashq, mashaqqa. It's practice. And so the first ingredient and the main ingredient and the last ingredient in calligraphy is patience, sabr. And if you don't start out being a patient person, you will develop patience. Or you may not continue. But, I don't want to judge anybody. I'm a very impatient person. I'm just going to show you a little bit in thuluth before I move to other styles. Now, by the standards of writing calligraphy, I'm writing and moving very fast. You see, I'm started to run out of ink there. And you notice how my voice gets quieter because I'm being very quiet when I do calligraphy. It's a very good activity to do in solitude. One does need human interaction, however. So this is the letter Ba, and what I just did was measure with those nuktas, with that essence of our writing, to make sure it was the right width. And it was, and I'm happy, and I say, Alhamdulillah, I'm not thrilled with my Aleph, but now I'm going to measure it, at least to see the height of it. And I will say the Aleph is one letter that comes in many different heights, but it needs to be at least 6, and it should be probably at this size, no higher than 8. So we did 7.5, so that's good. And I will tell you that you will see fine masterpieces of work, and you will see, I'm going to bring over a print, you will see that where you have an Aleph, you have this point. The point is made after the calligraphy has been done with a smaller pen, and it's added in, it's touched up actually. So when we're students, we don't have to worry about that when we're just practicing. I'm going to get a fresh piece of paper, and I'm just going to show you lesson 1 for thuluth. Now I'm also demonstrating Kufic today. Kufic is such an ancient style that there's the connection, the silsila, has been broken, and it's not an Icazet style. And what I mean is there's a curriculum to thuluth, and then the small style that it's paired with naskh. And a student will first find a teacher, and then will set out to learn how to use the tools and to learn the letter forms, and will get many corrections from their teacher. And at the end of a long and intense period of study, of learning all the connections and writing poems and pieces to your teacher's content, you will get your license or diploma called Icazet. And these two scripts get an Icazet together. So I begin people with thuluth because it's easier to keep a pen trimmed to a slightly wider pen nib than it is for these tinier little letters. But in the old days, when you went to a teacher, you would ask a teacher if you could be their student. If they accepted you, you would present yourself to them, and they would ask you to write this sentence: Rabbi yassir wa la tu'assir, Rabbi tammim bil khair wa bihil aun, before you got to the independent letter forms. So it's a bit of a challenge. My feeling is, in the old school, in the old world, if you came back, that meant that you were willing to stay the course. I will say that you can see these red dots, and the red dots are the equivalent of that measurement nukta. So here's a ba, and there aren't 6 circles, but there's the letter 6 in Arabic. And this is also this is a Y, which is similar to a ba. This one is 3 nuktas high. Look at the inside of the wow is 4. So the reason they're doing it in little dots, or little circles, is so that you can see the letter form firstly, mostly, and then have that measurement there for you when you need it. So I worked on this sentence along with a Bismillah, which you've already heard about, for many years. In fact, I'm still working on it. And you can see the Rabbi yassir wa la tu'assir, Rabbi tammim bil khair, and then you can see my teacher's corrections. And sometimes he wrote extra big so that I would see it. And it's good to wear your glasses when you do this work. And also, half of the study of calligraphy is learning letter forms. And I would say the other half is learning how to use your tools, and then combining them so that you can look down and know when you've made a letter correctly. But this is a recent meshk page for me. This is just practice. This is just when I sit down and I want to warm up a little bit. And you can see that I'm constantly measuring things, and I'm constantly making bad letters. The learning curve continues as long as you're alive. Now, I've taken a lesson in Talik, and you can just see by these practice pages, these meshk pages, which I won't show my teacher. I will present him with a final. they really impart to the viewer the different kind of texture and feeling to the nature of the writing. Back to Thuluth. Measuring is so important. When we make letters in Kufic, it's very different than the Thuluth style I just demonstrated before in ink. And now we're going to turn to a felt tip pen because it's something that we can get in this day and age. So I'm going to put my pen down on about a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to go against the grain, and I'm going to push to the left, make that sort of almost circular form, and then I'm going to head straight up. And I'm going to thicken the top part or the end part of that letter. I'm going to put my pen on the page again on a 45-degree angle to make the ba-ta-tha form. I'm going to go up to a 90-degree angle, but I'm quickly going to lower my pen angle so that when this ends, and this can be very long if needed, when it ends I'm closer to a 45, but I want to thicken up that ending part so it looks strong. I'm not using diacriticals because they were not in use at the time that Kufic was developed. The jim and the ha again start on a 45-degree angle, and we make this stroke from left to right. And then we turn back and go right to left, being straight and then looping around and coming through here underneath a little bit and rolling onto the tip of our pen. We're going to thicken this up. It's always thickened up in all the old documents I've seen, all the old manuscripts. We make the dal. We have a 45-degree angle. We have a little come down to the left and then head right. And again, this line, this horizontal line, can be extended depending on the needs of the line, the page, the word. And as I do this cross stroke, I gradually come down to a 45-degree angle, and then I'll thicken this up a little bit so that it just looks a little more strong. When I make the ra, I start on a 45-degree angle and I go up and over to the right. I'm going to loop down. Now I'm going to come back, fill that in. It's sometimes easier when you actually have wet ink because you can just push the ink around. Now, I want that more rounded. There's a lot of touch-up that's done that you don't see. Speaking of S's, here's the scene. And look how these three teeth, I'm actually keeping my pen on a 45-degree angle, but see the slope of the actual stroke differs. So I want to square off this bottom with a 90-degree angle, and then I want to come down on a 45-degree angle and bring it up to a 90 and come across. Now, again, these aren't actually set lengths in Kufic. Notice that there. That's actually part of the letter. So we move to the solid 45-degree angle. We're going to make a straight stroke to the right. Come down. We're going to go up to a 90-degree angle to make that square. We're going to make a straight stroke to the left. We're going to stop. We're going to go up to the 45-degree top, come down on a 45-degree, and then we're going to go over. And I'm trying to turn my pen a little bit so it ends on a 45-degree angle and kind of thicken it up a little bit. Our ta and ba, we're actually going to pull down. So we're going to start at the top and go down. I'm going to come across, making a straight line from right to left, and then I'm going to go just above it and go from left to right. Did I say right to left when I meant left to right? The fact is, when you get in the zone of writing, your verbal skills, well, I'll speak for myself, they go downhill. So that's the Ein, which has a lot of resemblance to the Jim family, Jim group, right? And we thicken this up here. The thing about the Ein is that you want that, starts on a thin. The Fa may be one of the more difficult letters, and it's because of the roundness and the difficulty of making a round shape, although it's not exactly round. We want to have an eye in the middle, and we basically are filling in. And believe me, more than once I have filled my eye in completely, especially when you have wet ink. So we're going to bring this down so that we can make this horizontal tail, which, like most of the horizontal strokes, ends on a little bit of an angle, and you can see that it gets touched up. This should be round. This can be touched up a little bit. That's maybe a little bit too square, but it's not completely square. The Qaf, again, has this head. So watch how I fill in. And I have to leave myself a little circle. So sometimes I go up on the tip or the edge of my pen. You want to make sure you have enough on the right side. And this is really cute, what happens here. And by cute, I just mean that it's slightly easier. Now I'm going down to a very low pen angle to make that thin. And now I'm bringing it back up to 90 to come across. And I'll end it at a 45 so that I'll thicken that up a little bit with a separate stroke. When we make the Kaf, we start again at the top and come down. Now the question is how long to make that. You certainly want it higher than it is wide. You're going to see a lot of repeated strokes here. So if we were to take our pen and make those nuqtas that I was talking about, I would say it's 6. Could be a little more than 6. Sometimes it's a little less. Our meme, again, we have the roundness. Now, it's not really a circle. I used to think of it like as a grapefruit, but really I feel like it's a very ripe tomato that's been sitting on the counter for too long and it's sort of sagging. It's almost triangular, almost. Again, all these letters are studied. There's the tail on the meme. And in different Kufic documents, you will sometimes see just a tiny little, like, mouse tail. Now watch this. Watch this noon, 45-degree angle. Straight down. We stop at the bottom, we turn to a 90-degree and come across. Now, what I will just say about it is, in learning about angles of your pen, you'll discover that that 45-degree angle, when you make a stroke like this that's going down and to the right, you get a thicker stroke, even though the angle is exactly the same, than when you pull a vertical stroke. The wow. Again, we have that head, that roundish head. And you're going to see how I'm going to just pull this down there because I can, because it has, a little bit of a tail. And believe me, this, it takes practice. And again, I'm ending on a 45-degree angle, and I'm thickening that up a little bit. The ha, in some ways, is simple. I always have a hard time with it. 45-degree angle down. Very close to the top, we're going to come out. What do we liken this to? How do we describe it? I really don't know. I'm going to make myself my eye hole there and fill in all the ink. And again, I am sometimes using the corner, leaning up on the corner of my nib of my pen with these felt tips. You don't want to push down too hard because you'll wreck it. And last, but of course not least, is our ya, which is both similar to and different than many of the other letters. In some ways, it reminds me of a Gothic S in Latin script. See how that cross stroke, of course, ended in the 45 degrees. I'm going to firm it up, and I'm going to thicken this up here a little bit. It's always done that way. I want to thank GAMA for providing these services they're providing to everyone. I want to suggest you check out Scripts and Scribes. It's a website. My website is harmonyofline.net. Check out calligraphy at your local calligraphy guild. And may you all be blessed and healthy and safe. Thank you so much.